What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Nail That Tone, a series that's all about helping you guys achieve some of the most legendary guitar tones of all time. In this episode, we're talking about Megadeth's United Abominations, and specifically about the song Sleepwalker. There's so much cool stuff to talk about as always, so let's get right into it. So we're talking Sleepwalker this week. As always with the Nail That Tone series, the first thing we're talking about is finger tone. For finger tone this week, I really wanted to talk about and highlight the impressive rhythm guitar playing of Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine not only writes these like super cool, heavy, thrashy riffs, but he's also playing them live while also singing live. So I just want to take a moment to really kind of appreciate like how difficult that is. And as guitar players, when we learn some of these riffs, even though they're not the most difficult riffs maybe in the world to play, they are still pretty tricky. And when you compound that with having to sing, it's definitely pretty impressive on Dave Mustaine's part. I really wanted to highlight the difficulty of doing those two things simultaneously and kind of acknowledge Dave Mustaine's just rhythm chops and sort of his talent that he has. And it's a big part of the Megadeth sound for sure. So now we're talking about what gear was used for this particular record. Now for my research, it looks like Dave Mustaine was using a pretty rare piece of gear. It looks like Dave Mustaine was using this rare prototype of a Line 6 preamp / power amp combo that we see him actually introduce and show us in this kind of short video that is available to watch on YouTube, where he talks about kind of his rig during this era of United Abominations. This Line 6 amp was a prototype and has never been released to the public. As we see Dave Mustaine confirm this information, as he confirms that it's still kind of a prototype, that it may go into production, but as fans in the future we see that it's a model that never came out. But there are a few out there, and Dave Mustaine was definitely using them live as well as in the studio, because it was confirmed, at least by a post that I saw on a forum site, by the actual producer and engineer of the record. On the guitar side of things, it's very likely that Dave Mustaine was using his signature Dean guitars for this particular album, because it was around the 2006-2007 era of Megadeth that Dave Mustaine switched over to Dean guitars and started endorsing that brand. I think prior to Dean guitars he was using ESP guitars, so it's very likely that he used some of these new Dean guitars on this particular record, or some ESP guitars that he would have had kind of around during this era of Megadeth. And when it comes to guitar cabs and such, Dave Mustaine has always been kind of known for using Marshall cabs. However, during this era, it does look like they were kind of being endorsed by Line 6, so it's possible that he may have used a Line 6 cabinet during the recording sessions of this particular album. But this information is kind of speculative, so he may have used some kind of Marshall cab or maybe some other cab, but it's very likely that he probably used a Marshall cab or a Line 6 cab for this particular album. So now we're talking about the gear that I used to get the tone that you guys heard in the beginning of the video. Now, when I don't own these kind of rare pieces of gear or something similar, my kind of go-to option is always my Axe-Fx or my Kemper. So for this particular video, I decided to use my Axe-Fx because it kind of allows you just so many options to edit the tone, and there's so many different amp models. So again, this is just kind of an overview of the preset that I created for the tone. You can always, of course, try the settings that I have. This isn't intended to be a super kind of thorough, exactly, preset breakdown of how to get the exact tone. It's just kind of what I used. So for amp type, I used the 5150 kind of type or amp sim that the Axe-Fx has. I used the red one. Now, if you guys saw in the beginning of the video when we were talking about the amps that were used for this particular album, you did see that Dave Mustaine during the studio, we can see in the background that he did have a 5150. So I'm not sure if they may have used that a little bit on the album or just kind of had it there as an extra amp. But we do see that he was experimenting with these kind of amplifiers. So I do feel that it was a appropriate amplifier to use for that similar sound. And thinking about it sonically, it does sound pretty similar to what I hear on the actual record. So I did have a good amount of drive, and everything else is kind of standard settings, nothing too advanced. And when it comes to cab, I just use some factory kind of I guess like Marshall cabinets, and I just added a little bit of EQ just to make the guitars a little bit brighter, because they're pretty bright on the United Abominations album, and added a little bit more body, raising some of these lower frequencies, and that's pretty much it. I mean, nothing too complicated here. A lot of the final kind of shaping comes in post, so nothing too special here, just something getting using my ears to get something similar and then kind of finally shaping it in post kind of usually tends to be my approach. So that's pretty much what I use to get the sound that you guys heard in the beginning. So now we're talking about what other gear you could use to get a similar tone to the album. Now, since on this album they use some Line 6 products, I do think that kind of staying in the family of Line 6 would get you a similar tone. So I would recommend, of course, using some of the Line 6 products like the Helix would probably get you something pretty close. Stomp, of course, some of the older Line 6 products would probably have a similar tone. And of course, using any high quality tube guitar amp that has a good amount of gain, it's a high gain amplifier, will definitely get you pretty close to the tone. Again, there's kind of a lot of options here. There's some budget stuff with the Line 6 and there's expensive amplifiers that could definitely get you a similar tone. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing. We release a lot of videos like these on a weekly basis, so hopefully guys, we will see you in the next video.